Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. My name is Gemma Scotcher. I am Director of Communications and Public Affairs at Education Support. We are here because it's almost summer. I'm going to introduce our wonderful panel in a minute, and it is a really, really good panel. But just to tell you a bit of housekeeping and a bit of why we're here before I jump into it. Firstly, the webinar is being recorded. It will go on our website afterwards, so you can rewatch at your leisure, and indeed share with any colleagues who you think might find the information useful at another time. So that's that. I hope that's fine with everyone. And we will introduce the panel, have a conversation, and then open up to questions afterwards from the attendees. Please use the Q&A box for that. Jump in and just include any questions that you have for our wonderful panelists, and we'll do our very, very best to get to those. And yeah, rest, joy, reflection. That's why we're here. But mainly because it's almost summer, right? And from what we know, talking to school staff, it can be really, really hard to take a moment at this time of year and pause and reflect. You know, you've just had an academic year. Well done for getting through it. Thank you for getting through it. We really appreciate everything you do and have done. We want to give a chance to sort of talk about how we might carve out that time to pause and reflect on the year that we have had. And why? Well, we do think that, or we hope that by pausing and reflecting, it might enable you to go into your summer breaks with a little more ease, a little more able to get the most out of that break. And we'll hopefully explore a little bit about that with the panelists, why that might be and what that might look like. So yeah, we want to help you celebrate the good, the impact that you've had, the difference that you've made. But there's also, you know, what are the trickier moments in the year that can be really, really easy to avoid, understandable to not want to do. But there can be gold, I think, in looking at that as well, thinking about, reflecting on, and maybe letting go of some of those challenging moments from your year. So that's what we're here to do. In a second, I'm going to ask the panelists how reflecting on the year can help you make the most of your summer break. But firstly, I'm going to introduce them. And they are, as I said, an excellent panel. So who have we got? We've got Kemi Omije. Kemi is one of our fabulous supervisors. So if you've been on our programme, then you may know her through that. She's an experienced child and adolescent psychotherapist. She's got years of experience working in education and with local authority services. Also, a previous school senior leader, which I didn't actually realise the last time we spoke. So, wow, what a great amount of experience you're bringing today. We look forward to hearing from you very much. We've also got Sheldon Stewart. Hi, Sheldon. Sheldon is a SEND teacher and transitions coordinator at New City College. He's got experience working in FE and as a SEN teaching assistant and a job coach as well. Loads of experience and a passion for supporting inclusion in education. So thank you for your time, Sheldon. We look forward to hearing everything that you've got to say. And another Gemma. How lovely. Gemma Thurston, head teacher at South Essex Academy, taken the school on a very positive journey of improvement in her time there and specialisms in curriculum and in SEND. So hopefully we can hear a little bit of mental health expertise, hear a bit about the experience of educators and leadership as well. So lots of really interesting perspectives to bring today. So back to that original question then that I floated. How can reflecting help really busy staff make the most of that summer break? Kemi, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to come to the other guys for an education perspective.
Thank you. I think it's really important. I think, first of all, I think it's important to start with, we often underestimate the importance and the impact of pausing. But I'm assuming if you're on this webinar listening, you're either curious or you already understand the importance of pausing. And I'm practicing it. Why it's important is because one of the main reasons is that it helps you avoid burnout. Like at this time of the year, working in schools, there's so much to get done, and you want to kind of dot all, cross all your T's and dot all your I's and be really done. But it's a really reflective act to kind of pause, both for your psychological well-being, but it's also purposeful. And it's really important to say there's a difference between a permanent stop, which is the summer break, and a temporary pause to reflect, gather your thoughts, think about, notice what's impacting you, what's impacted others, and actually re-energize yourself for the remaining few weeks so that you don't go into your summer holidays burnt out. You don't go into your summer holidays completely exhausted, because actually, if you do go into your summer holidays completely exhausted, I'm sure some of you listening will probably be familiar that it takes at least a good week for your body to even just get out of the school system, get out of that. You're still waking up early, even though you have nowhere to go. And that's because we haven't paused earlier. We've just gone from work right till the end of term, and then we've just dived into the summer holidays. So that temporary pause before the summer holidays is really powerful and really important for both your psychological well-being and to actually give you that energy for you to make the last few weeks a bit more purposeful for you. I could go on, but I will pause there.
I thank you, Kemi. I absolutely love this idea of the purposeful pause. I'm just going to really re-emphasize that, but hopefully we can come back to that. But first, Sheldon, tell me, how can this pausing and reflecting help people make the most of their summer break?
I have to reiterate and praise Kemi for her input regarding to the pause, because I think like coming in FE, we have exams that are still going up until the end of term in July, because we also have adults as well as the 16 to 19 division. So for us, it feels as if that we constantly are running on motor oil because it's never ending. However, in between there, we have opportunities to reflect, and that's part of our CPD process. So staff have a day of where they're able to have out, and it's based on their department, and that gives them an opportunity to be as honest as possible, as well as a day without students. So it gives us the time to really look back on what went well and then give some small opportunities to plan for the future. But from my end, I'll definitely say that it's the best way to go about it is to be as honest as possible. I have some levels of pessimism years previously when I was given opportunities to reflect, and I'm like, well, it wasn't that great. I'm looking forward to the new term. But as I've grown into my role, as well as grown into working in education, I'm very happy to say things like I'm absolutely drowning and I'm looking forward to the end. And it allows me to kind of get it off my chest, because I find that when it's done and it's out, I'm not carrying that heavy burden of, oh my gosh, it was really, really hard and I haven't really been able to talk to somebody outside of the situation. So definitely, I think, yeah, take the time to pause, but also be honest in that pause and when it's to release, rather than being a little bit personal or politically correct with it, because I think everyone around you is feeling the same way. It's just nice that we're all able to kind of bounce off one another in that pause, rather than some not feeling that they can be as honest as possible.
Perfect. Thank you, Sheldon. So we're looking for a purposeful and an honest pause where we're really digging deep and thinking about what the year was really, really like. Okay, that's so helpful. Gemma, what about you?
Yeah, I think the points Kemi and Sheldon made, I would 100% agree with. Purposeful, honest pausing. But I think as a leader, you want that for all your staff, not just your teaching team, or it needs to be the office team, the cleaning team, everybody. So one of the things we try and do is we try and do a pause every half term, and we'll have, with line managers, we have a bit of a discussion, what's worked well, what's not working well, because I think we're really good at supporting our students, our young people, our adult learners, whoever it might be, in education, of supporting their mental health and well-being, we're ever conscious of it, and we'll say do things like have a brain dump, write it down, journal, but when do we ever do that for ourselves? I think we're very good at giving advice and not following it in education. So we try and facilitate that through this kind of structure and a systemic way to make sure it happens, so that we write it down. And I think for me, personally, I find it really helpful doing that with my senior team as well, that I lead, because actually, we've had a really tough 5 years at my school, taking the school from a very low position and got our good Ofsted this year. So it's been really tough. So we've had to, thank you. It's been, but that kind of journey, and we were legacy outstanding. So we've been waiting for 5 years. So I've been ahead for 5 years. And we had our inspection in March. So that's a long time to have that pressure. So we had to kind of work to find ways to contain everybody in a positive way. And I find that we found that was really valued by the staff. And it came out of our wellbeing survey that we were doing. And we've got a trust strategy steering group for wellbeing with our senior mental health leads. So that's kind of where the idea came from. And it's worked really, really well. It just gives people a space. And I think what Sheldon was saying about sharing the burden, I think is the worst thing. I think sometimes the battle with burnout is in our own head sometimes. So actually, because it's your battle with yourself and, the baggage and that you bring in your life experiences, your personalities, I don't want to get too psychological, your early childhood experiences, all of that stuff comes in. And actually that's the things that you often battle with. So actually, how can you support everybody? So you can write, we've got a plan, we can leave that and we can pick that up in September. So it's kind of, we've done that thinking, now we can switch off. I think when you don't do a mechanism like that, people keep thinking and worrying, and that's when anxiety builds, and suddenly September becomes a big thing. And I remember as a class teacher not having those kind of supports, like feeling sick for like the last week before I came back in the holiday. So I'd lose a week like coming down from the burnout, then I would lose another week building the anxiety for September. So we don't always get it right, and there's more things we can always do, but I think just thinking about that and how you support your teams is important.
Wow, there's so much in all of that. I've got 3 directions I want to go in my head, but I must pick one. So I'm going to ask then, Sheldon touched on, this honesty point. And I think that's so important on an individual level when we reflect, if we're reflecting on our own, to really be honest with ourselves with what our year has been like. But equally, I really love that you guys are making these efforts to reflect together as a team in the workplace. I think that can be so powerful, that connecting together. But obviously there can be, the politics and the hierarchies and all of these things that, maybe might make it a little harder for people to do that honest reflecting in a group setting. So I'm going to start with you, Gemma, and work our way back round again. How can we make it safe to do that for our colleagues? How can we create a space where that honesty can happen?
I think it's your culture, isn't it? That comes back to your culture. Your staff need to feel psychologically safe. And how do you do that? That's every breath you take. So not just saying everybody's safe here, but making everybody feel like that in their actions. And if colleagues aren't making each other feel safe, that leaders or line managers address that all the time. And then you build a culture, and modelling that as well, modelling that with each other. If you're open and vulnerable, people will mirror that back to you eventually. But you've got to be brave to start that process.
Yes.
If you're in a culture that's not like that, you need a little team that can go out and wave that flag of honesty and vulnerability, and then the trust builds from there. And actually, we do have a very open and trusting team. When that's something our inspection team said, "Oh, you've been so open and honest, warts and all," and it just made the process actually so much smoother, because it didn't feel like a big deal to everybody. It was kind of a bit of an anticlimactic for me. After it went, everyone just got on with their day, and I was a bit like, we've been waiting 5 years for this, like we're just getting on with it, like what do we do? But because we'd kind of created this culture of openness and vulnerability together, and then you get the most out of any kind of meetings or discussions that you have. But you can't just do it overnight. It's got to be everybody all the time.
Yes, or everyone all the time doing it together. So Sheldon, what does that look like? You know, what helps, what lands for you in terms of creating that safety?
Firstly, I have to let you know my lights they come and go, so apologies.
We're used to it, don't worry.
I was trying to wave to say come on, but I thought let's
Yeah.
not fight for that now. So I have to say, listening to Gemma, I was just like, yes, this is like the reflection of how like my team is based at. Because I think if you're not able to have the people around you to where you can just say how you're feeling and they don't judge you for that, they embrace it and go forward. I think that's one of the best ways to be able to work in education, because everyone is frustrated with things that's out of your control. But the way how we can get to that situation, not necessarily reflecting on where I work currently, but a previous establishment I worked in, which was a special school, and I did booster classes for their English and maths. And one of the things that helped with it is that every half term, not every setting might be able to replicate it because it just depends on how the personalities work. But the head teacher had, there was a local pub next to us, and the head teacher put money behind the bar at every half term. And within that, there were spaces within the pub so that even if some people had their own groups, it was like a space for the school to go to. And even though there was managers that went there, it was an opportunity just to have a drink or just to have food or just to have a release at the end of half terms. And when I worked there for 2 years, I didn't have a sense of feeling that there was any like politics that you would normally have in an educational system. Because everyone just felt as if something happened, everyone kind of would work together. There won't be any kind of issues between wanting to support one another. And I think that really helped with that because everyone, no matter what happened between like the half term, everyone knew that at the end of the half term, they'd be able to kind of release and just have a little bit of a release, even though there was like managers there as well. I think that really helped to foster that sense of trust and that sense of whatever happens during the working week is not a personal thing, it's just work. And then afterwards, when we had the half time, it became we're human again because we're able to have a little something, have a little snack. And it didn't feel personal, it just was work. And I think when it comes into the system, that helped.
Yes, and it sounds how amazingly helpful it can be just to change the scenery, right?
Yes, I think that is exactly it. It's taken away from the working environment, especially myself. I find myself, I'm always in the office, or if I'm not, I'm in class. So being able to even just take a walk outside of work and then come back, it refreshes my mindset. So I think helping that half-term break to look forward to as that school was beneficial. That could be one way to maybe work forward to it, to have socials that was pulling away from the working environment and having somewhere that was neutral that staff would go to.
Yeah, brilliant. And Kemi, I'm really interested in your response to all of this, but also maybe on top of that, as a mental health practitioner, if someone is really struggling to be honest with themselves on an individual level, struggling to turn inwards, if you have any thoughts on how they might approach that or, loosen up some of that reflection in themselves.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, first of all, I'll just underscore all the things that have been said around psychological safety, because I think there is more awareness around psychological safety, but it's not as easy as it seems to embed. And I'm really pleased when Gemma said it's a cultural, there has to be a cultural shift. It's not something that you can achieve in certainly a day. Like one of the components for psychological safety is around connection, communication, even safety in terms of being able to speak to your line manager about your workload and how realistic that workloads are, and feeling seen for all that you are within an organization. I think psychological safety is a big deal in terms of working as a group and working cohesively, but there has to be kind of a shared agreement on what psychological safety looks for, particularly for your organization. I think each organization's definition of psychological safety will be very different. How do you as an individual are you Was the question about reframing your thinking around?
Yeah, if you're not used to reflecting, because that, you know, we work in this space, we talk about it, we think it a lot, and maybe I'm certainly guilty of thinking, oh yeah, reflecting, we all do it every
Yeah,
day. But
I
actually,
think
it's hard for some people, and
it
how
is.
can you loosen that up and build that ability?
Thank you. So I think it's the first point is observing. Without awareness, you can't do anything if you don't have that awareness, you can't do anything about it. So the first thing I would ask you to do is just notice your day, notice how you're feeling, observe what's going on for you, whether you're feeling irritated, what made you feel irritated, even when you're feeling happy. Often when we're thinking about reflecting, we're thinking about the things that have gone wrong. Well, actually, reflecting on the things that have gone well is also information. So the first step to reflecting is noticing what's going on for you. The next step from that observation and that noticing is noticing if there is a disconnect between what you're saying and what you're feeling. And we all go into work with a work persona. We all bring our work self into work. And that can be a good thing. It can be a strength. Many people actually talk about compartmentalizing as a strength. Like I can leave home at home, I can bring work and I can focus, and that's a good thing for you. But are you aware that you're doing that? Is that a psychological strength, or is that a psychological struggle that you need to kind of work on because you're using it as a kind of avoidance coping strategy? So I think when you notice if there's a disconnect between what you're saying and what you're feeling, so if you're saying yes to your manager but you're thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do that? That's a disconnect. If you are if you're kind of in class and your mind is wandering about other things and you're distracted, you're not giving the pupils your full attention, that's a disconnect. So you really need to kind of close that gap between what you're saying and what you're feeling. And then the next question is, I often ask myself why. I think it's reflecting is about asking more questions than having answers. Why am I doing this? Again, keying back into that word purposeful. Who is it for? Whose voice does this belong to? When you're giving yourself a hard time, is it my pressure? Is it internalized? Is it external? Where is this coming from? So I think it's okay to ask yourself more questions than have answers. And finally, I have to say this, using supervision. Supervision, you can't do reflection alone. So that's the starting point. When you have that awareness point, that's the part that you bring to supervision. So often people think reflection can be done alone. And actually, one of the challenges I find with somebody that actually thinks they've got it all figured out with reflection is they come in, they kind of have a monologue, their whole script of everything they're going to say. And there isn't even a point of entry for me as the supervisor, but reflection is a dialogue. Reflection has to happen with somebody whereby you're bringing those questions, you're bringing those observations. I call it, you're bringing the puzzle pieces, and then we're putting the puzzle pieces together. It needs both people. You have the puzzle pieces. You're the expert on yourself. I'm not you. I'm not in your body. I'm not living through your working day, but I have that psychological insights and knowledge. So together, you have a space where reflection needs a space and needs somebody professional to guide you along that reflection.
Yeah, so you can actually start to unpick the story that you're telling yourself.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh, there's so much richness in that, Kemi. Thank you so much. I would like to think a little bit about what Sheldon said actually about the kind of coming together, reflecting, and you used the phrase, Sheldon, getting it done and out. Releasing the stuff. Why is that important? Like what you guys that are doing the reflecting, well, all of you, you're all doing it. You're all doing reflecting relationally in the workplace or with people in the context of work. Like, what are you seeing happen for people when you're reflecting and they're getting it out? And what does that mean then for them going into their breaks? I'm going to start with Sheldon.
I could probably share like a recent personal thing towards myself. So in my job role, we also oversee the consultation process for EACP learners. So when the local authority sends us the documents to review, if we can meet needs. There was a recent learner that we said that we couldn't meet needs, but then later on when we observed and then further information was sent to us, we said we could. And then there was other thing that was bumps in the road. And then at the end of the day, I received an email that was a little bit red, a little bit And then I said to my colleague on the side, I said, I'm going to respond to this. However, can you just listen to my response? And then my colleague read it over to me and then gave me feedback. And then the feedback was actually, Sheldon, I think your response is not really the response to go with. And I was just like, oh. And then as she spoke through to me about her side of it, I said to myself, actually, I hear where you're coming from. And I think after when we had this, and I remember I was going home, it was just like, okay, that was done, that Friday is over, and then I have Monday to go into. And I think the reason why that was beneficial is because throughout the whole day, we were having a lot of back and forths regarding that particular learner. And it was just me really with just dealing with emails. And then at the end of it, I was just like, my frustrations was built into the point of where I was like, feeling quite anxious because it was an outcome that I wasn't really sure how it was going to sway. But having that somebody else to give me their point of view that wasn't an agreement with my point of view, but then seeing it from the other side made me go, actually, my pent up angst regarding to this was something that was just coming from because I was just dealing through it in my own mind, just reading what emails had been done. And I think at times I was reading it in a voice that wasn't a positive one, when reality is it was just reading it off a script that was being sent to me. So I definitely say that just having the opportunity to let it out, it 100% is like that pop of a balloon where all the air just comes out and it's just like it's free to fly around and do its thing. It's not trapped anymore. I think that's 100% beneficial, at least to how I work. And it's something I'll definitely say to my other colleagues as well. That whenever reflecting, Kemi mentioned, is to always to try to bring somebody else into that viewpoint, because so many times that we will have that narrative, and as professionals, I think sometimes we can be quite perfectionists, and because of that, that can then create a negative whirlwind regarding what we're going through. And then somebody else would come in and completely knock that Jenga down, and then you're like, actually, I didn't need to build that tower up to be where it needed to be. So yeah, definitely letting it out releases a lot of the anxiety and stress.
Because otherwise it's just churning away inside you. And
it's just building up those Coke bottle effects. And I think it's not the best way to deal with it. Definitely speak out to others, even if that person isn't on your same wavelength. I think a different point of view allows you to be able to take things forward without that same feeling that you've been naturally going in your own mind.
Yes, absolutely. Because actually we're relational beings, right? And we don't talk about co-regulation enough. We talk about self-regulation all the time. Like we've got to, learn that muscle and self-regulate. Otherwise we're some kind of, failure for having all these big feelings. But actually, I personally have always been much more of a co-regulator.
It's funny that when we deal with our young people and they have some falling out, we as adults will go in and kind of facilitate it, but then the students will then have to build a relationship there afterwards and then work on things. I think as we get older, we kind of get into a mindset of if we have an issue, we need to manage it ourselves. But it's like, as we're growing up, we need other influences to be bringing that diverse experience to grow us. So it's like, just because we're adults, that shouldn't then stop.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, we still got those children inside us somewhere, haven't we?
Yeah, we're still growing.
Yeah, still growing. I love that. Gemma, over to you.
I think just following on from what Sheldon says, like have a tribe around you, have the people that you trust. I write the email, Sheldon, that I want to write, and then I've got two people I bounce off before I send it. And they're very different. I start off very emotional, and then it kind of becomes more measured over the drafts. So now being self-aware obviously is part of that. But also having your people, and I've had real periods this year where I've been quite stressed, especially leading up to the Ofsted. We thought we were going to get Ofsted before Christmas. That's what they said. The weeks drew nearer to Christmas. Every time my phone flashed, I felt sick in my stomach, like that was going to be the call, whilst trying not to put that across to everybody else and feeling the responsibility. And I think, we in our senior team, we've sort of developed these strategies of tells of each other. So having your tribe around you to ask you to do jobs. But there was this one particular day and I was really feeling the pressure. And I think I zoned out eating my jacket potato. So my deputy says, if I'm getting stressed now, she goes, "You being jacket potato, Gemma, have a break." Like, you know, and she's got like her tells as well, where I'll be like, right, you're doing X, you need a break. And actually, you know, but having that part of the conversation, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm such a perfectionist. I like to please people and be strong. I'm like equally all the drivers, if you know Kayla's drivers. So they battle inside me all the time. I want to be perfect, but you can't always be perfect and please everybody. And so I don't always know when actually I'm stressed. I think other people know before me because I'm too busy being strong and hold it all together for everybody. And that's my issue to deal with. But for me, it's been so important to have people that you can go to. And I think generally, you know, making sure whatever you are, whether you're a leader or a different, you know, different point in your career, having people that are positive influences on you, that will be honest with you about your behaviours and how you're acting, which could be linked to your emotional well-being or your mental health, but also making sure they're a positive influence and not driving you down, because we all know we get the martyrs in the staff room that can just really suck the energy out of everybody. And if you're going to those people, that's not going to get you out of a dip. So having the right people for the right moments that you might need them, I think is really important.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I love jacket potato, Gemma. I'm going to take that with me. Kemi, getting it out. What's that doing for us? How does that help us go into the break?
It's really important. By the way, I love the concrete examples Sheldon and Gemma gave. They're really tangible and they're actionable, and hopefully people can take some away from that. And I think for me, that's one of the things I enjoy most about supervision and kind of supervising senior leaders specifically with our role, because actually you can visibly see, and I can actually tangibly feel the difference when somebody comes to supervision with something on their mind, with all the things and all the difficulties that the dilemmas, the difficulties, the conflict, and that hour, and that really focused hour on them, on their work practices, on the way it's impacting them, and then they transition out of that supervision and they leave lighter. So the impact of that is, I mean, for me, it's a real perk and it's a real high. I really enjoy seeing that difference. So you're physically and psychologically lighter. So that balloon example that you gave, Sheldon, sums it up really well. And I think it also offers you clarity. It actually makes you better at your job. And actually picking up on what you said, Gemma, about co-regulation. I think it's really powerful in a school, and it's really important to focus on in a school, because we have a lot of emotional regulation that we're doing with children and young people, and we're a container for them in many ways. And actually the container needs to be contained themselves. The container needs looking after. So it's of course, you are the center, you're part of the school community, you as a member of staff, your feelings. And when we're talking about school communities, we're talking about you as well. We're not just talking about the pupils and parents. So your feelings matter, and it affirms you and it validates you, but it also safeguards the children, because then you're performing and you're working at your best. You're not kind of making any snap decisions that then has a knock-on effect or a domino effect on the children that are kind of projecting and spilling out all over, because they're either dealing with their own challenges or they're working on their own emotional regulation. So it's really important to look after the container that is looking after the children. And you're not containers, you're human beings, but looking after the people and the humans that are looking after the little people and the little humans.
Oh, that's so it, isn't it? That's what it's about. Thank you so much for that, Kemi. I'm going to try and get a question out that, forgive me, it's not fully formed. So bear with me while I just try to get this out. It's sitting with me. So when we were planning this webinar, we have a fabulous member of the comms team called Jen, who is a former teacher, and she's actually off getting married at the moment. So she's not here, which is a shame. But when she talked about why she wanted to do this topic, she talked a lot about kind of the guilt that a lot of teachers carry into the summer holidays, right? And you've all mentioned perfectionism. And I just think there's such a relationship between that guilt and the perfectionist. That perfectionist in so many people in education is what sort of stops them from being able to maybe let go of some of the feelings. And that's really what we're talking about, isn't it? Allowing ourselves to let go of the self-judgment, or the, telling off for the little mistakes that happened in the year. So if we think about that guilt and that perfectionism, those tough tendencies, what are we doing for ourselves at this point in the year to help us let go of that? How can we put that down in order to go into the holidays lighter, which someone's mentioned? How can we do that? Does that make sense as a question? Great. It wasn't fully formed. Thank you for bearing with me. Gemma, I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, I massively struggle with this. I'm not really sure I'm an expert on it, to be honest with you, but I'll give it a go. So I feel like I've had to really make an effort to not do that. First of all, try and tell myself what's perfect anyway. What is perfect? Because somebody's perception of perfect is not another's. So
it's not real, is it?
It's not a real thing. And what's perfect to you? And I think having been, on journeys of getting 2 schools now of special measures back to back, that's been a stressful 10 years of my career. So I've really had to work at not letting that impact on my personal life. So having this, having the holidays, having the breaks. And I think the thing is sometimes you can just be good enough, and that's okay. And telling yourself, I've done the best I can, and drawing a line, because in education we can always do more, we could always do but sometimes it's doing the right things that has the most impact. So actually burning ourselves out, working really hard. I used to think if I worked really hard it would be okay, and burnt myself out, and I was like, actually that's not the right thing. It's about doing the smart things, making priorities, deciding what's important. Anything to do with the children is absolutely important, and I make a real effort to go into my summer holiday. I'm on guard for on watch, if you like, for safeguarding. But apart from that, everything else waits. Everything else can wait until September. Even when my office team are emailing me, this parent really wants to know this, well, they can wait till September, because it's not safeguarding. So, really having whatever your priorities are, whatever your role is, saying what's important, what's not important, and try and do the most you can do to be ready for September. Like I think some of us talked about at the beginning. So then you can put it away. You can have it's on a list, or having, I love lists. So knowing in September, this is what I'm going to come back and do. And I'll shut that away in my cupboard, and I don't get it out until probably sometimes the weekend before we come back, and just trying to really have those habits. And I think the phone is a terrible but wonderful thing. It helps me be a busy mum. It helps me be a head teacher, but it's also always there. You're always on call. So having some real boundaries. And I've had to learn to be a lot more boundaries, but the more boundaried I've been, the happier and more easily I can switch off. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's almost like you're making your lists because you're sort of downloading your brain.
Yeah.
You've done your thinking. This is what I want to do in September. I'm downloading it here and I'm putting it away. And then I can come back with the confidence knowing that thinking is done. So there's not going to be a flustered sense of where am I when I return.
No.
But you're not carrying it in the holidays either.
No.
Yeah, it's very good boundary setting. I love that.
It's taken a long time to get there, but I'm learning.
Yes, and also just to underscore, because education support has to underscore this point. It sort of underpins everything we do. Yes, you do a better job by not burning out. Sometimes you do a better job by doing a little bit less, a little bit smarter, rather than trying to do it all. Because at the end of the day, with the needs and services and everything where they are, you could work every single hour of the day and the job would still not be done.
Yeah.
So there has to be a point where there is a line in the sand. Otherwise, it doesn't end, does it?
Exactly. I think that point you made about ruminating on things you've done, that's a really dangerous road to go down. And I can sometimes feel myself doing that.
Yeah.
But I think is this going to matter in 5 years? If this isn't going to matter in 5 years, will I
remember this in 5?
Yeah, then it's not important.
There's got to be a way of asking yourself, is this worth the mental energy I'm giving it? We have an exercise on I think it's on our website, that my colleague Faye talks about a lot, which is dedicated worry time, which I think can work well for rumination. Maybe not if you're neurodivergent or if you have a diagnosed condition, but maybe for others it can be helpful, where you focus and go, this is my worry time, this is my rumination time. I'm going to write it all down, get it all out and put it away. Some people get on quite well with that, I think, as a way of boundarying that energy. Kemi, my unformed question. Any
How
thoughts?
about you? I think, first of all, I'll say that within the framework of that, all feelings are information. So if you engage with your feelings as information, then what is that guilt trying to tell you? So my first thing is to say, you're not necessarily trying to get rid of the guilt. You're just trying to be aware of it, and you're trying to kind of find the purpose for the guilt and redirect it if it needs redirecting. So for you, I think you have, guilt is a very personal thing. It's very strong. It's a very strong emotion, and it's really emotive. So you need to figure out who does it belong to. And actually, at this time of the year, both in my private practice and when I was in schools, all of my roles were wellbeing roles. Safeguarding was a big thing that triggered guilt, because actually there isn't, with all of the children's that have challenging lives or challenging mental health difficulties, there isn't a nice, neat package, and then you can go off into summer holidays. And sometimes the safeguarding concerns are what triggers the guilt. And I think that's where you go back to your role. And it's not cold, it's not a distance to go back to your role. What's my role in this safeguarding complex matrix pyramid? What's my role in this young person's life? Have I done everything I could possibly do in this to do with my role? Literally, if it means literally bringing out your JD and going to that. And sometimes, and I've said that to staff before in supervision, and they're like, but, and when the but starts coming in, I want you to, that's the point that you pause and you reflect. Why are you so uncomfortable sticking to your role? I'm not asking you to do less than your role. I'm asking you to literally stick to your role. And then that's when we look at organizational culture. That's when we look at, actually, is your guilt beyond organizational culture? Is this a personal thing? Do you need to take it beyond supervision? Is this a therapy thing? Is this a self-development thing? So I think that's one of the ways to tackle guilt. And again, it's also about compartmentalizing. So I was going to say about that, like having sections off. And actually, back to what Gemma said about perfectionism, you can't get it all right all the time, and it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not catastrophe. It's not nothing. The world doesn't stop because of a mistake. But actually, you might be stronger. You might be better. You might learn something you might not have learned if you don't lean into that mistake. If you make a mistake and you just move on, or you try and sweep it under the carpet, or you don't engage with that mistake, then nothing shifts. But actually, if you engage with that mistake and you reflect on it, it's okay. And I think it's, for me, one of the ways I do, I embrace the guilt. I noticed that ultimately, I think you're trying to tell me something. You're trying to tell me to look at something. And so I will take that guilt and I'll be like, okay, what am I supposed to be looking at? What information should I be looking at with this guilt?
Yes, that's it. It's always when you talked about pausing, looking inwards and being in relationship with your feelings, ultimately, the next step is to say, these are information. I think culturally, we almost play whack-a-mole with our feelings and say, oh, I've got a feeling, get rid of it. Oh, it's a bad feeling, get rid of it. And I understand that impulse. Difficult feelings are, of course, uncomfortable, but they are information, aren't they? Telling us that maybe something's not in line with our values. Maybe we've betrayed ourselves somehow. Maybe we've, disappointed ourselves. These are all very, very human things. Ultimately, even the AI robots aren't perfect, so we definitely are not able to be. Sheldon, tell me, what are your thoughts on this perfectionism strand that we're exploring?
I agree wholeheartedly. A conversation that was had previously, where I said that for me, when I was teaching, one of my aims was, and some people thought I was kind of a bit low, but it's to be a consistently good teacher rather than a sporadically outstanding one. And that's
Brilliant.
because I think when you aim to be outstanding in very spiky ways, you burn out far easier because you'll be building up towards that really great lesson. And then for the rest of the week, you're completely burnt out, or you do something on a Friday and your whole weekend is wiped because you have to do all that massive prep for it. But if you just aim to be consistent, it's not about doing any less, but it's just providing the same level of service towards your learners. I see it as that sporadicness of hitting that 200%. Well, if you compare it to if you just do 100, if you should have a low or high, it won't have a massive impact on your learners or the ripple effects regarding to your setting. But if you're constantly trying to hit for 200, everyone will kind of be aware of when that 200 isn't hit. And then that then causes further guilt on yourself because you feel, maybe I should be constantly doing that. But as Gemma mentioned, that can lead to quite a lot of burnout.
Yes.
But further into that, I find myself that when I work, I try to be very fact heavy. So if I'm dealing with something, I would, throughout my year, kind of document it in a way that when my end of year reflection does happen, or if there's changes in my learners' destinations, or things happen that might not work out, I look back on the facts and I look at it and go, what could I have done differently and what could have changed, rather than having the worry or the questions going, what could I have done or should I have done this? But then in reality, if I look back on the facts, I can say, well, I did this, so it wasn't something I could have done because this was done. Or there shouldn't something I should need to do because during my reflections on my past half term look backs on this was the outcome. So it's kind of like going down a river that leads you to the ocean rather than going down the river and you've got many different side areas that's taking you to where it may not necessarily lead you to the correct destination. I think it's a good way to make sure to look at the facts so you don't feel so guilty at the end because you know that there is reason for what has happened. And I think, like Kemi has mentioned, looking back on your JD, I think is really, really important. I've had times when I've had some of my support staff that will say things to me, and then I look at them and I just say, it's fantastic that you're feeding into the culture of the classroom, but this really isn't for you to write down, take on. It's good that you can enjoy your summer break, take it. I will then do my follow-up with the parents that needs to be done with when I was class teacher. And so I think everyone can fall into a trap of wanting to do more, which is great. But like I said, if you try to be sporadically out there, that's not going to work for you on the long term, because I think working in education, we all do it for the passion, but that doesn't mean that it's still not a job. And a job shouldn't be overly done because you're passionate into it, because you'll be burning out sooner than rather than later. Better to be in it for the long haul rather than burning out in 5 years.
Oh, that's so helpful. And the thing that I find especially useful thinking about what you've just said is better to be consistently good enough rather than have a spiky profile of going at 200% and then collapsing into half term. You know, sprint collapse. We hear about that sprint collapse pattern so often from educators. So we do a lot of talking about energy management, you know, and how do you really be in relationship with your own personal levels of energy to avoid being in the sprint collapse pattern. So I'm conscious we don't have a huge amount of time left, but the word rest is in the title of this webinar, actually. And we've talked a little bit about these spiky profiles. So I just want to get a really quick, before we move on to kind of final thoughts, a really quick reflection from each of you on, you know, going into these holidays, how can people be thinking about their energy, you know, when it comes to the final little sprint of term that you've got left? How you might engage with rest or rejuvenation, you know, stuff that helps you recover, but stuff that re-energizes you as well throughout the holidays. You know, what do you guys that are practicing educators do to manage your energy levels? And Kemi, I'll ask you for some reflections as well. In fact, Kemi, I will start with you.
That's a really good question. One of the things to say is that those spikes are not good for you physically. So your body is literally experiencing. So your body sometimes can't tell the difference between kind of imagined stress and real stress. Like the same hormones and the same things that get activated if you are going through a traumatic or stressful incident will get activated when you're catastrophizing in your head, when you're really anxious and when you're really worried. So those spikes are not good for your body. And I say that to say that your rest has to include both something physical and psychological, and you have to decide what works for you. So that's where that self-awareness comes for you. So for me, it is about completely shutting off a massage, a walk, being outdoor in nature, cuddling my dog. I have a dog, so and away from the children. For me personally, Mother of the Year awards to me, but because their noise, their sensory, my children are loud, so that's not good for my body. So knowing whether you are doing something for your body or for your mind. So if I'm doing something for my mind, my body, I need physical, I need quiet, I need space, I need air. I literally need air, I need space, and I need to be outdoors. I need all those sensory tactile stuff. For you, it might be a conversation with a friend. It might be watching something that makes you laugh. Actually, when you're laughing, again, back linked to what I was saying about your body feels it. So your body experiences that joyous moment. So if it's just a 30-minute video or on something that's really funny for you, I'm not going to embarrass myself by saying the things that make me laugh, but finding something that makes you laugh. And then psychologically, I think you do need to, all of those tangible strategies that we've discussed over the course of this hour is important. You do need a space to download, whether that's a journal, whether that's a supervisor, whether that's a therapist, whether that's a trusted mentor, line manager, friend. You need to download. And then you need to have that in September. This is how you need to have a plan for September. September shouldn't creep up on you. September, you should know September is coming. You should know, and you should have a plan about how you're going to transition into September. And finally, if all of these things, I have to say this, if all of these things are in place and you're trying to do that and you're finding it hard to still look after your well-being, then it's okay to revisit the conversation around your organization. Is the organization the right organization for you? And I don't think we named that enough. There is the right organization for everybody, and it might just be that there's the cultural and systemic factors within your organization is not right for you if you're already putting these things in place and they're not working.
Oh, really, really great tangible stuff. Go get that oxytocin from having a laugh with your friends. It does wonders for your body. Gemma, over to you.
I think echoing what Kemi said, really, I think I would just like to say that for me, I was very good at numbing. That's something I've explored with my wonderful supervisor who I have with education support. I was very good at numbing, and whether that was, I'll have a glass of wine to relax, or I was like Netflix and chill, or like I don't play games. I even downloaded like a Jenga game on my phone, and I was like, right, I'm going to do this. And then I was like falling into a 3-hour rabbit hole and like ignoring my children, again, not Mother of the Year, because I was playing this flipping game and they started playing it as well. And I was just like, what am I doing? So, and I think for me, I have to really work at those things. So for me, it's breathing, it's mindfulness, it's and when I get really stressed, I'm like, I can breathe, I can do the breathing. That's not the proper breathing, but for me, it's like daily practice of these things. And when I get stressed, I stop doing the things that keep me centered. So I think for me, I'm not there yet, but trying to be more self-aware of being proactive rather than reactive about the things that fill my cup up. And again, I like being at the beach. I live near a beach, so I go to the beach. I have a puppy. I cuddle my puppy. Nature, all of those things. But when I'm feeling stressed, I will go to numbing. I'll go to Netflix and chill and a bar of chocolate, not a walk with the dog, which is probably what I should do. So I think just being really self-aware about, this is how I chill out. Is that a positive thing for you, or is it a numbing mechanism? Would be my advice.
Yes, that's so important, isn't it? Because you're not able to, if we think about Kemi's great advice and, being in touch with what we're experiencing and thinking about what it's communicating to us, numbing is not doing any of that, is it? It's doing the exact opposite. It's letting all of that turmoil rattle around in your body, and not finding a way of coming out again, which, reflection or all of these joyful energy replenishing things that you're naming might help with. Sheldon, what are your thoughts on this spiky energy profile? How can people get the best out of their rest and their energy over the holidays?
So this is kind of relates to my current role in transition. So some of my colleagues probably don't like it when I'm sending emails near the end of term. because the aim of my job is to ensure that all the information that's gathered on our young people who have SEN or an EHCP is disseminated towards the current groups that they be going towards. So it can be quite a lot of information overload at the end of term, but I can definitely say when term starts in September, everyone feels a little bit more at ease because they're aware of the profiles of the learners that's coming into their classrooms. So for me, when it comes on to term ending, it's about ensuring that everyone is aware of what's going to be happening in September so that they are able to enjoy their break rather than feeling that when term ends, they know they're going to be getting a cohort of students that they don't really know anything about. And then September starts and then they're very anxious and then they've got kids that they need to start planning stuff for, but they don't know about. So definitely will steal Gemma's of creating the list, because currently now kind of like bombard my staff with things that they need to be aware of, but I definitely will incorporate listing far better to ensure that everyone's aware of things that we need to tick off for, and then for September, it's an easier thing to look back over that list to be like, okay, so these are the things that we accomplished and these are the things that were remaining, or things that weren't able to accomplish, or what can we then do for the term started. So definitely, I think the process on my side is ending the year with all that I need to be aware of for September so that the summer break can be enjoyed rather than leaving it unknown and then having the anxiety because autumn term is already very rough. So it feels, yeah, it is probably like the longest term. So I try to make sure that the staff here have an easy autumn term amongst every other tribulation that they need to go through.
Yes. Your email strategy sounds a lot like, yes, Gemma's lists, and that getting that thinking organised before the end of term so that you can put it all down.
Yeah,
And
just to enjoy the break.
yeah.
And just out of the way and out of your mind, you have your break to worry about, which is to enjoy it however you like. But then leaving it to an unknown, you sometimes come back and then you have to then prepare your classroom. And then, well, in the midst of that, you're thinking, oh, but I still haven't done this or I haven't done that. And it's like, no, if you already ticked off everything you needed to do, you can come in, display your classroom, and then go home and enjoy the rest until September.
Yes.
Without having anything more to worry about.
Oh, wow. There really couldn't be a better point to end on, really, Sheldon. Thank you so much for that. That's just wonderful advice. And thank you to all the panelists. Everything you've said has been so rich and so helpful. And I really hope that everybody who's been listening, you know, feels a little more equipped to think about how to celebrate everything that you've done that has been amazing this year, and I bet there is absolutely loads, but also be kind to yourselves and put down some of the more challenging stuff and enter into your break to just really get the most out of it and come back in the new term re-energized and healthy and, you know, ready to do more amazing stuff. So thank you so much, everybody. I do just have a couple of points just to land before we go, which is that we have my brilliant team have produced a little resource, which is a reflective exercise. So if you do feel inspired by the conversation and think, yeah, I do want to sit down and really do some inward thinking, we have a resource for you. We will be sharing that with you via email with the recording and all of that stuff. And there will be a very short little survey in the email as well for your feedback on the webinar. So please, my team would tell me off if I didn't beg you to please fill in the feedback form. So do that. And just a last point, before I wish you an amazing holiday, we are a charity. If you are able to set up a small regular gift to support the work you do because you get something out, the work we do because you do get something out of it, please get onto our website and check out the donate page. That is much, much appreciated if you are able, but do not worry if you can't. And otherwise, I just wish you all a restful and fun holiday. I hope there's plenty of stuff that re-energizes you and that you have a fabulous return in September. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and for the panel for just being brilliant and wise.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.